When I was recovering from an emotionally abusive relationship and I learned about the trauma bond, that moment was a game changer for me. And that's why I have so many videos on the trauma bond, because I know it's had a similar effect on a lot of you. When I learned about the trauma bond, it was a moment where I could finally free myself from blaming myself for everything that had happened and beating myself up over the feelings I was having. So I have a video called 6 Signs You're Still in the Trauma Bond. And in that video, a lot of people have recognized that they are still trauma bonded to the abusive person. And they've asked how to break these bonds, which is a great question. So in this video, I'm going to cover 6 ways to break the trauma bond. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and on this channel we talk about emotional abuse, its connection with spirituality, and we attempt to answer the question, where do we go from here? So if that all sounds good, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever I post new videos. So today we're talking about how to break the trauma bond, and I have 6 tips for you to do just that. But before I jump into the 6 ways to break the trauma bond, I want to address those of you who may need a little bit more help to address the abuse that you've been through. Emotional abuse, even if no one had ever laid a hand on you, emotional abuse can have a physical impact on your overall health, and it can cause things like CPTSD and severe anxiety or depression. So if you're dealing with any of these things and you're struggling to maintain your daily life, you feel like these things are getting in the way of you actually being able to do things that you should be able to do, it may be a good time to talk to a licensed therapist or a counselor. Much like any of my videos, these 6 tips are not a replacement for therapy if you feel like that's something you need. But on the other hand, if you feel like you're in a good place, you're making strides and you are overcoming this, or if you feel like this hasn't set you back to the point where it's interfering with your ability to live your day-to-day life, these 6 tips are going to be super helpful for you. All right, so let's dive in. So the first tip is to stop blaming yourself. Easier said than done, right? I know, I've been there. You can consciously think this isn't my fault. And especially when you start learning about the trauma bond, it starts to resonate. You start feeling it, that it's not your fault. But when you walk away, when you close the video, or you put the article away or the book or whatever, wherever you learned about the trauma bond or wherever you're learning about it, when you put it away, those blaming, those self-damaging thoughts tend to creep back in. So in those moments, go ahead and pick something back up. Watch a video, read an article, pick up a book, an audio book, whatever might help you. In these moments, even words of affirmation, just speaking them aloud, especially in front of a mirror, can really help to drive that message home for you. It may seem silly at first, but it really does work. So the second tip I have for you, it's kind of similar to journaling, and maybe you guys have tried that before. And I know that I've done journaling here and there, and I find it to be super helpful, but it's hard to stick with it. So for this tip, I'm going to suggest that you actually write your story as if you're writing a story, as if you're writing a fictional piece about someone else, except it's actually what you've been through. Pick a name for each of the characters in your story and include everything you've been through, the good and the bad and the ugly, and write it all out in sequential order as if you're writing a story. And as you write, you may find that you actually start remembering things that you had forgotten about. Write it all down. And as you're writing, it might help you process some of what has gone on, and writing about it as if it were someone else can help you kind of detach from it and see the situation for what it really is. So if you're reading a story that happened to someone else, your life story, what do you think about it? And what would you say to that person? Chances are you'd be a lot kinder to that person than you would to yourself. So those are things to pay attention to as you're writing out your story. So the third tip I have for you is to check in with yourself daily. And especially in the moments after you're getting out of this relationship or realizing that you've been a victim of emotional abuse. Spend some time every day checking in with yourself and seeing how you're really feeling. Now, this is important because when you're in these relationships, when you're in emotionally abusive relationships, they can be so incredibly numbing. So if you're trauma bonded, you're most likely going to be repressing your feelings, because I know I've been there. If you actually feel your real feelings and you let those come out, you're going to have to face what's really going on, and you're probably going to have to leave. And the trauma bond keeps you tied to this person. So the only thing you can really do is, if you're not willing or ready to leave, the only thing you can do is repress your feelings. So in the aftermath of these relationships, and when we're trying to break the trauma bond, we need to really start feeling our feelings and recognizing them, acknowledging them for what they are. So set a timer and each day spend a few minutes trying to feel, acknowledging what it is you really feel. If what you're feeling is numb, acknowledge it, but try to dig a little bit deeper. What I found helpful when I'm in those moments when I'm just feeling numb and I don't know what I'm feeling is to look at my feelings in terms of happiness and unhappiness. So if I think about a time when I was really happy, truly happy, and I know it, there's no question, I was happy in that moment. Or a time when I was really, truly sad. Where do I fall? And these aren't the only two emotions, but they're the two I think that we're most familiar with and we're most able to identify, especially when they're in extremes. So what I found helpful was to look at those two things, look at extreme happiness and extreme sadness. And in that moment when I'm feeling numb, where am I? Numbness, I guess, would fall somewhere in the middle. But is that really where I am, or am I just numbing my feelings? So you may or may not come to a conclusion in this exercise, but I think the exercise can be helpful. At least it was helpful for me to start getting back in touch with my feelings. Okay, so the fourth tip I have for you is probably going to be the most difficult, universally difficult for all of us, right? And this is something that outside of the trauma bonds that we all struggle with. And that is expectations. We all have expectations and they all get in the way of our happiness. So if you think about it, if you think about any time you were upset with someone, it's probably because you had expectations about how they were going to act in a certain situation and they didn't live up to it. Expectations are a recipe for disaster because they're a recipe for disappointment. But when it comes to breaking the trauma bond, sometimes expectations are exactly what keep us stuck. So we might expect that person to feel remorse. And if you're dealing with a narcissist or a highly narcissistic person, it's not going to happen. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, that person is not going to feel any level of remorse. And if you're actively trying to get that person to feel remorse, if you're saying things and doing things, hey, look what you did to me, I want to point out that that is definitely breaking no contact, and it's going to be breaking gray rock as well. So it's not something you should do. But even if you know that, you shouldn't be telling this person about all the bad things they've done, or even if you know they're never going to feel bad about it, you might still be sitting back and actively hoping that person gets their karma. And that can keep you tied to this person as well, spiritually and emotionally. And furthermore, that can actually bring bad karma upon you, because really what you're hoping is that something bad happens to that person because they've done bad things. So wishing bad upon somebody else can really do more harm to you than good. So it's just bad all around. So if you can in any way break any expectations that are tied to this person, then you will start to break those trauma bonds. So the fifth tip I have for you is to lean into spirituality. So if you follow this channel, there's a good chance that you have some faith in spirituality, whatever that looks like for you. But one of the reasons why I started this channel really was because when I started getting out of this emotionally abusive relationship, I started noticing things that really couldn't be explained any other way. There was some crazy stuff that went on, and I talk about a little bit of it in my spiritual awakening story. So if you're interested, check that out. But I know that a lot of us have gone through kind of similar things where we start seeing signs and synchronicities, and there are things that could really only be explained as divine interventions when you're ready to get out of this relationship, or if you, like me, if you've stayed too long in the relationship, and you start seeing kind of like the writing on the wall. So again, that's one of the reasons why I started this channel, because I feel like that's something that I know it's a common experience that many people have, not everyone, certainly not everyone, but I know that many people have had that very same experience. And I was kind of wishing that more people talked about it. So I'm not going to go in depth into all that stuff here, but I will link to a few videos that you can check out. Again, you can check out my spiritual awakening story if you're interested in my own personal story and seeing if maybe you can relate to any of that. But ultimately, bottom line for me was that through all of this, there were lessons that I needed to learn that I know. Me personally, I'm not saying this is the case for you. I would not have learned any other way. So in the end, even though it was hard, I appreciate all the hard times and I appreciate all the lessons that I've learned because they've really helped me grow as a person. So the sixth and final tip that I have for you to help break the trauma bond is to practice gratitude daily. And this practice, it may seem like it has nothing to do with the other person, and it's true, it doesn't. And that's one of the great things about it, because it's something that you can do to start appreciating what you have right now, right here and right now. Even if everything feels bad, there's got to be something that you appreciate. And when you appreciate something, when you appreciate what you have, the good things will grow in your life. And when you have a lot of things to be thankful for, you're going to spend less time looking in the past. So I hope you found all that helpful. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. And if you'd like to see more like it, subscribe, and I will see you next time.